I'm going to show you one absolutely amazing and very famous opening trap to crush your opponent in only 9 moves. And I've taken this from a game, not played between just 2 random patzers. I'm talking about Fabiano Caruana, world's number 3, and Alireza Firouzja, world's number 11. And you hear it good, the game lasts only 9 moves. And it's even better, it involves a double rook sacrifice. This is amazing. This is something you almost never see at the very highest level, but it happened in today's game. You will enjoy it. Make sure to watch it from the beginning till the end. And I'm asking only one favor, and that is to hit the subscribe button, to give this video a like, turn on the notifications to make sure that you can follow all the latest videos on the Robert Wrist Chess channel. And if you're very generous, I really will appreciate if you consider making a donation via PayPal in the link below this video. Thanks for the overwhelming support. And now let's see what happened in this very short and exciting game. As I said, Fabiano Caruana is playing with the white pieces. He played the move 1c4. Firouzja with black goes for c6. So he's ready to play the Slav defense with the move d5 coming next. Well, Fabiano goes for knight f3. d5 indeed played. And here we see the move g3. This is the so-called Reti opening. Very famous opening, popular line. It avoids a lot of sharp, immediate battles in the center. But anyway, the game lasts only 9 moves. How can this go wrong for black? Let's find out together. Bishop g4. So black is developing the bishop with ideas even to take the bishop for the knight. It's making a lot of sense, of course. You can just continue developing with a move like bishop g2. That's absolutely fine. But the most ambitious move is knight e5, of course, to hit the bishop on g4. Now, you got to decide where to go with the bishop. There are various options. The bishop went back to f5. I mean, I can tell you that maybe even bishop e6, that is probably considered to be, theoretically speaking, the best move. It looks a bit odd to stand in front of your e-pawn, but you're overprotecting the pawn on d5. Why that is so important, we will see in a second. Because after the game's continuation, bishop f5, there followed the move queen b3. And here you see that the white queen is hitting the pawn on b7, and black got to defend that pawn, of course. If you lose that pawn, your rook is under threat, and maybe later on the pawn on c6 is going to drop. So there are potentially some serious problems. But look, black played here the move queen b6. This is the thematical response. I mean, if you see a white queen coming to b3, black goes queen b6. And who is going to trade off queens? That's the big question. But white first captures the pawn on d5. This is super important because you're taking a pawn almost for free. I mean, if you do take back on d5, there is queen takes d5. Of course, that would not have been possible had the bishop been on e6, defending the pawn. You don't want to lose a pawn as black. So instead of taking back on d5, black decided here to take first with the queen on b3. Trading off queens looks like the position becomes very calm, like nothing is going to happen very soon here. White, of course, takes back. And what is black going to do? I mean, you would expect black here to take on d5. This was not played, but let's just pause for a second. What happens if you take back that pawn on d5? Then white probably will play the move knight c3 to hit the pawn on d5 immediately. This is problematic. You don't want to lose that pawn. If you defend, let's say with the move e6, then knight b5 is a very annoying move with ideas to give a knight fork on c7, hitting the king and the rook in the corner. Even the pawn on a7 is hanging. I mean, black is already in huge trouble here. You should try to avoid this as black. And Firouzja knows this, of course, but somehow, I guess he got brainwashed. Probably he forgot the exact lines, but he understood that he cannot take back. So Firouzja, very gifted tactical player. He knows his stuff. He's really good. So he felt that he can be very clever at this point. So he played the move bishop to e4. Instead of taking back the pawn, he just inserted his move bishop e4 to hit the rook on h1 and the pawn on d5. So it looks like a clever move. I mean, if you're going to move the rook to g1, then you take on d5 and it's game on. Anything can still happen. Even if you play f3, there is this move bishop takes d5 and okay, it's a game. But wait a second, look at this, guys. After the move bishop e4, white didn't solve the problem of the rook on h1. White just played here the move pawn takes c6. This is amazing. This was played in the game. And black decided here just to take the rook. What is this? Why did white sacrifice a full rook? He is not really able to promote the pawn. I mean, if you take on b7, the bishop can just come back by taking the pawn on b7 and everything is under control. Black is a rook up in that case. So that doesn't work. If you, instead of taking the pawn on b7, for instance, push the pawn to c7 by hitting the knight, intending to promote the pawn with the c8 queen, you're threatening checkmate. But black can just move the knight away and the rook covers the promotion square. There is absolutely nothing white can do. So this all doesn't work. But now, here, the big moment in the game. And for some reason, this was overlooked by Firouzja. But in Russia, every schoolboy knows this trap. I know it. I mean, my students know this trap as well. Everybody knows it. Why does Firouzja didn't realize that at this point, white has a stunning piece sacrifice? I hope that you have seen it before. If not, look at this, guys. This is insane. Rook takes a7, game over. There is nothing you can do here as black. With the point that if you take the rook on a7, now you can push the pawn to c7, attacking the knight on b8. Compared to the previous line with the rook on a8, that knight is threatened to be taken and white gets a new queen. It will be checkmate. If you move the knight away, then you just promote the c-pawn with checkmate immediately. There is nothing, absolutely nothing you can do against this threat of either promoting the pawn on c8 or by capturing the knight. After this move, rook takes a7, Firouzja realized that things had gone wrong. He must have felt ashamed of himself that the whole world is watching him making this blunder. For me, absolutely bizarre. I remember I had some old opening books. I think it was published by New in Chess. Some traps in the opening or tactics in the opening it was called. And I remember having seen a very similar tactical motive like I'm showing you now. This is one trap for many, many years. It exists. So bizarre that Firouzja falls into it. I mean, he resigned on move 9. There's no way to prolong the battle because after any other move, white is going to take on a8 and the black position is falling apart anyway. Could black have defended better? Let's go back to two very important moments in this game. First moment is instead of taking the rook on h1, you may consider taking just back on c6. But here, the point is that if you take on c6 with a knight, there is bishop takes h1. This is something you better try to avoid as white. But rather than just taking on c6, the key move is f3. This is a very good move, counterattacking the bishop. And if you take on e5, then you take on e4. And if we do the material count, we see that white is having a very nice extra pawn and the bishop pair. So that looks very, very good. So this is also not a real solution to black's problems. Therefore, we should go back even one more move. So in this position, instead of playing the move bishop e4, I can even show it to you from the very beginning. It's such a short game. 1 c4, c6, knight f3, d5, g3, bishop g4, knight e5. Now bishop e6 is one of the options, as I said. Bishop f5 played. Now after queen b3, queen b6, okay, it's still possible. Take on d5. Now, in order to avoid the loss of a pawn, you take first on b3, exchanging queens. And we have already seen that taking on d5 is not such a good idea because of knight c3. So black should not do that. We have seen already the disaster evolving from that move bishop e4. That's not a solution either. Basically the only move here for black is to avoid the problems here by taking with the bishop on b1. It's generally speaking not a good idea to trade off a developed piece for a piece which is still on its initial square. That's usually what you rather try to avoid. But the point is that if you take back on b1, now it's time to take back on d5. And here the big difference is there's no longer a knight on b1 which can come to c3 to hit the pawn on d5 and prepare ideas based on knight b5 and a knight fork. So this is absolutely okay for both sides. It's just a game. Just one interesting thought I had when preparing this video, I was thinking, okay, after bishop takes b1, can white not just take here on c6 anyway? Like, this is a very similar trap as we have seen before. I mean, still the ideas with rook takes a7, with the idea to push the pawn to c7, they're still applicable here. But black, rather than trying to save the bishop, can first eliminate that very important pawn. Knight takes c6. This is the key move. If you now take the bishop on b1, it is knight takes e5 and black is a piece up. So that is not going to work. If white instead decides here to take on c6 himself, then, okay, if you take on c6, rook takes b1, I mean, black's pawn structure is not too great and white is actually a pawn up. But the problem here is that it doesn't work for white. Black can now play the move bishop e4, and here the big difference is that two pieces are under threat, especially this rook in the corner on h1, and it means that black is going to win material. So bishop takes b1 is still the way out for black. This is what black should have done, but Firouzja is not the first player on the planet to fall into this trap. But it's bizarre that world number 11 falls into it. Let me know, please, guys, what do you think of this game? Is this just absolutely shameful? Is this something it can happen to all of us? Probably yes. I mean, I can imagine myself playing an online game, maybe not fully concentrated and fall into this trap. But for somebody at this level, he's a professional. He should know his opening traps. You should know it as well, of course. So it's bizarre. It just happens. But that's what happened, guys. I'm telling you what happened in the world of chess between two of the very best players in the world. Make sure never to fall into this trap yourself when playing with the black pieces. But if you're, for instance, playing the English opening or the Reti opening with 1c4, hopefully you're able to make use of this video and set up the same trap in one of your own games. Hopefully you liked it. Let me know in the comments what you think of it. Thanks for watching, and hopefully many, many more cool tricks like you have seen in this game. So stay tuned. See you very soon. Bye bye.